Is this thing on? Yes, I'm going to assume it is. Alright, cool. So as you can see here, I've done a little bit more work on this, so I'm just going to take this thing off because it's been a bit silly. Actually, I will just... no, I won't check it. I'm sure that the stream's going fine. I can see that there's not much coming through the PC or audio output other than my mic, so you should be able to hear me perfectly fine. Alright, so yeah, what we're looking at here, I've gotten the character to have its clothing and that changed. So if I hit iron out to my inventory, you see that I don't really have anything. If I press C, you can see I've got a couple of these clothes. I haven't hooked these ones up yet, but we can actually bring up the developer panel and I can start putting in some of the things that I do have. So we can have some of the plate outfits. We'll grab these shoulders, plate shoulders as well, we want those, and the hat, and the cloth chest, and the plate. That's a plate belt? No, it probably shouldn't be. Alright, so now as we go through, you can see I can put that on, I can put that on, and I've got the hat, and you can see the pieces are going, and if I take them off, it's also going back to roughly how it was. I don't know why that has doubled up there, it probably shouldn't, but that's okay. Now we've got the shoulders, there's a weird thing with these shoulders, what's going on there, so that's fine. So yeah, I don't know. I've filled these out with using the names. I'll show you how I've done that in just a minute. But essentially you can see, yeah, we've got plate clothing now and then the plate helmet. So you can move around and we've got this little dude. So what I've done here is I've had to mesh these two systems together. It's not the best solution for this thing. I had to play around. 2.0 has changed the way it does it. The way that it had it in 1.103, which was the last time I rigged it up, was actually a little bit better for meshing the systems. But 2.0 has got this really awesome feature, which is for hiding bits and pieces, so like your hair and stuff like that. Unfortunately, with this kit though, this kit actually already has that through its own little system. So the changes that were made in 2.0 to accommodate the RPGB system have sort of conflicted with that in structure. I've got it working, but I just don't think that it's entirely optimal, so I'd probably end up going and changing the way I've done it and making a bridging script. But instead what I've done is I've actually modified the scripts directly, which you can see I've sort of got here. I don't know if you'll be able to see this with whatever resolution it comes out to, but I've had to add in a few different sections there and then change some of the methods. You can see I've commented out a lot of the code that's in this part here. I won't go through it all, although I can go down to here. You see, and all I've done is I've basically copy pasted a lot of the original system code for it and just put it straight in rather than having to try and link it. I think there might have been troubles when I last tried to link it. So I'm not going to go big into that because that is doing more of the editing of the code directly, and I just think that it's only it's very specifically built for the system, and I've got all these models that I've got. And if you are going to use these models, then you can obviously just reach out on Discord, and I can give you some tips about how to work into it and what to look for and what to change. But again, like this is a very specific model set that has this, and I've really only got it because I like these little wavy pieces that float around. So yeah, if you're using say Cinti models, you're going to be having a completely different system again, and I think it'll actually work better with the RPG built-in system. And obviously if you're using the all the Blink models, they're already built to work with the kit, and they are looking pretty good. They've just released a new armor pack that's a huge bundle, and it's the armors just look really good. I'd be making probably even like a Skyrim style clone with that. But anyway, one of the other things that I did, because I wasn't able to stream earlier, so I was still tinkering around with a few things. I've managed to set up, so you can see here we've got these skills down the bottom. They're like my attack skills, but I don't really like pushing the number 1 key just to get an attack going. I want the left and right click to do stuff. But that's even just as easy as setting it here. So action bar slot 1, you can actually just change to mouse 1, slot 2, mouse 1. We can close it, and now you see it's got M0 and M1, and if I left click it'll do the attacks like I want it to do. And that's also fine because when I go like this and I've got say an inventory thing on this going, you see I can click on this and it's not actually making me attack. So that's already built in, that it's not just going to, and so I can move stuff around without it accidentally triggering, which is great. So that's all fine and dandy to have that set up. That, however, is actually tied to the character profile itself, so it's like a character's key change. I'll have a look at later on maybe how I can set that up to make it so that those two slots are always mouse 1 and mouse 0, mouse 1. But for now it's perfectly fine. So yeah, I've got this white block here, and if you haven't watched the or seen the Discord channel, you probably won't know what it is, but I've pretty much gone in and made my own little interaction system here, so I can walk over a spot and you see the door, it moves, pops up on the screen, and then the door itself will actually move, and now it's in its open position. But if I run back up here and go over that spot again, it's now triggering it and it's going to close it again. So this is just for, like, if you want little, like, interactive spots to pop up some text. Originally I was going to have it as like a narrative thing, so I'll actually pause the system and use the dialogue thing. But what I might actually do is I'll actually use interactive objects within RPGB itself to do that. This was just like a little zone thing, and I'll show you how I've actually got that set up. So if I go, just hit escape, I'm just going to turn on gizmos now. You can see now we've got a bunch of these little gizmos that are popping up, but if I actually select, it's in my environment here, I've got it. So I've got a test trigger here, and you can see I've just got a trigger script on here. It's very basic, but essentially it's just a little collider. You run over it, it flicks the trigger, and then it does an action. And here I've got this action at the moment set up to do two things. One of them is, is to display a message, which is through my little narration script here, and I can tell it now how long I want that message to be on screen for, and then what I want it to actually say. And I've got a text field here rather than a straight line, so we can even go, oops, I don't know why I did that. Hello viewers, and now you can see when I go through, it now says hello viewers. Of course the text is very, very small on there, but we can modify that because it's actually using the system itself, which is in Essentials here. It's using the canvas. Let me just go through just so you can understand exactly what's going on. I'm actually using the error events system, so I go error box, error text, and yeah, minimum set to 5, so I won't actually change that, so let's just go 25 as the minimum. And now, of course, if I run through it, you can see it's a lot bigger, and you can see it on the screen. So yeah, we can use that. There are some other methods we can do, such as there's region messages, which actually has like a background, but I wasn't able to get that to pop up, and it requires like a few other little bits and pieces. This was just the easiest to get something to pop up on screen. In the end, what I might do is I'll actually make a completely new canvas option that will be triggered by this in particular. But I just wanted to keep this script really basic and just do a quick tie-in with RPGB. So yeah, the way that I've got that done is I've just made a couple of easy scripts, which are the trigger system. So I'll actually talk about what the second trigger is. So you can see here I've got this, which is a door test trigger animation. So on the door itself, if we click on here, you can see we've got an animator, so I'm actually using an animation to open and close the door. There's plenty of different ways to move an object, especially if it's just something basic like a door. For this one, I just wanted to test how to do an animation. So what I'm actually doing is I've got a trigger animation script, and what this is doing is this is flicking off an animation trigger. And the way I've got that set up is I've just got an animator selected, and I've got it so you actually type in the name of the trigger that you're looking for. And then you've actually got this option here for an animator retrigger, and I've got that with another string, so I'm searching by a string for the trigger in the animator. But then I've got a little bool section here, which is the inverse retrigger. So what it is if I only want to trigger an animation once, I just want it to trigger the animator trigger. Once you go over it, it's done, and then it will tick an internal bool which says that it's already been triggered. So you can save that in the persistence thing and say that, yeah, I don't want it to happen again. But if you do want it to be something that you can do, say this door's obviously going to keep opening and closing every time I go through. And the reason I wanted that is because if you want the door to open and close, you don't really want to open it and then never be able to close it again. So what I've done here is I need a way to sort of test that, okay, yep, so it's open, but now I want to close it if I go over that trigger again. But now once it's closed, I want to be able to open it again. So by doing this, I've basically just got a very basic check. I'll go over the script. I'll actually show you the script as it is. So we'll start from the start, which is the trigger itself. So as you can see here, I've got a couple of things on this trigger, which if I actually come back here, So I didn't actually go through this. So I've got the option here, which is a player only trigger. So if I want something that's only going to be triggered by the player, like if it's like this, I don't want an enemy running down here and all of a sudden the door will open up. Like I want this to be a player only opener. So I've ticked it as player only. And then if we come into the script, you can see that when it's actually looking for the collision that occurs, if it's the player only trigger, we just want to check if the triggering object or the collider that's collided with our trigger is the player object. And if it isn't, then we want to leave it and we don't want to bother with it. If it is the player though, then we want to obviously invoke the event, and then we want to set it's triggered to true, because what happens is on the trigger exit, what will happen is it will do the same check, and then it will invoke an exit trigger action or an event that we've got set up, and then it will set is triggered back to false so that you can trigger it back again. If you only want to trigger it once, I've got to actually add in something here that will basically shut it off from being able to untrigger itself, if you know what I mean. So like it won't reset at all. That'll be another option that I'll throw in there. But then what I've actually done, because I've got it so, okay, we do want NPCs to do it, but maybe we don't want the enemy NPCs to do it. We only want friendly NPCs to do it. Because again, I'm making this as like an RTS style, so there will be friendly AI, and I want them to be able to open and close doors within our base. So I can set that here by having a faction doing it. I thought faction would probably be the best way of doing it, because when I go to set up the characters and the AI, I can actually set a player faction, so that any entity from that faction can be added to this list. So triggering NPC list, all I have to do is just add that faction there, and then you see when we come through here, if it's not the only player only trigger, then that means that our friendly factions can go and trigger it. So what it will do is for each faction that's actually in that list, which we're probably only going to have one in the end, if that's actually equal to the get faction result on our combat entity, I think that's what I'm going to be checking for. I actually have to test this out. I haven't fully tested this, but essentially the logic's there is that we'll check to see whether that the character that's colliding is actually part of the faction. If it is, then good, it'll trigger it, and then it'll do the same thing that it's done up here as the player, and then the same thing on the exit too. So but what this is actually doing here is that this is going to go, okay, if it's a player only trigger and then we've got a collision, we want to check this. Otherwise, if we haven't actually triggered it, because what could happen here is that what comes in and collides with it might not actually do anything, but that collider is still going to exit, and that will fire off this event of on trigger exit. So what I need to do is I need to show that when they entered here, it did actually trigger the thing. Otherwise, we don't have to do anything. So if it's not actually been triggered, then on the exit, we don't have to worry about it because we don't have to reset it. So I've just got that little return thing there to pull us out of this whole loop if it needs to be. Sorry if that's a bit confusing or not, but essentially it was just like it's a sort of a sanity check essentially. But otherwise we're doing the exact same thing, just in reverse order there. Cool. So the next part that we had on here was triggering the narration. So obviously duration display message I've got there is just a float, and then I've got what you want to actually have said as a timer on there. So if we come through here, I've got this little script, and this is just, again, a really simple one. I've got this call to the UI events, which is a RPGB script, and that can handle a bunch of the different pop-ups and UI things that will happen. In particular that we're looking for is the show alert message. So this is a function that is a public function on the UI events, and you can call this from something else. So all I'm doing is essentially just usurping that alert message function and passing through my text and the time to display it, and you'll see that's what kind of results in the little red text that pops up if I actually run through the collider. So that results in this, and you can see it comes up for a little bit and then disappears. So in the end, I might change that to something better in the future where it actually has my own UI and background, so you can essentially pause the game much like it would do in a regular dialogue. But I like that kind of feature with the old RPGs where you'd walk into a room and it will give you that sort of like, flavor text or the story, and then you click on continue and you play on. But very, very simple script, very easy to do, something like that. The next one is the door. And again, this one's still very super basic script. We've got a call to an animator, a reference to an animator. Then we've got our string, which are, again, like I was saying, with the two strings down here, so just our animator triggers. And setting what those are, and then of course, the public bool for is inverse re-trigger, and then private bool is triggered. So that again is just letting us know that yes, it's actually fired off, and that can be used then to do checks and that later on if you only want it to fire once in in its lifetime, whatever. But then we've got in the void, so it's just again trigger anim. We don't have to worry about anything because I'm going to call it from events. I really don't want to pass through any kind of values that I need there. You can actually set it up so that it takes a string, and then you don't really need this if you're only going to have it firing once and only one particular call, like on a repeat animation for whatever. You could probably do that. You could probably just pass through a string, but for this, the purpose of this, I'm just putting it in because I wanted it to be a door, so I wanted to have these extra sort of depth options on there. But again, so all this is doing is it's checking like, okay, has it already been triggered? No. If it's not triggered, then okay, set the triggering to true. And then in the animator, set the trigger, and it's the first one that we've got there. So then what happens if we're calling it again, we wanted to see if it is triggered, but if this little bool here, the inverse re-trigger is selected, then we want to fire it off again, but we want to fire it off with the second trigger function. And then we're going to set it to false. So what happens then if it gets triggered again? Well, it's going to pass this test here and go to the first one. So it's just a way of looping through each time you trigger it off. So this is like this will be an always on trigger, which is good. So you can switch between the two. But if you want it to only fire off once, you would set in a function here and you wouldn't call this false. You'd just leave it as it's always triggered. In fact, you probably wouldn't even do that. You will probably actually just destroy the object or destroy this component so that it wouldn't be taking up your precious space again, I guess. So they're the basic things. I'll have these scripts up on like a paste bin or something soon. I won't be able to share the modifications that I've done to the player appearance, but again, they're only really specific to my character models that I've got. And if you've got them, then I can you can sort something out with me, and I'll show you how to do it. But again, I had to do a lot of work on these characters here to set up some of the basic things for them. So anyway, that's all I've got for you tonight. I do want to get to bed because I've left it till too late at night, so I'm a bit tired. But tomorrow I want to look at how we're going to go about changing some of the other features. So there is a bit of an issue with the current demo. It's not as robust as the previous demo was. I think because of the changes, and to try and get it out there and get it in the hands of people, they've had to push it out a bit earlier than expected. So they've got this out, but as you can see, there's no real the ability is there to put in bows and arrows and ranged attacks and things like that. Like I think there is actually, if we go types, weapon types, you can see axe, bow, staff. Now the bow and the staff aren't actually in there. They were in the original one, so the RPG Builder 1, but they're not in this one. But you can add them in, but there's no projectile attack skills at the moment, so I'm going to have to look through how to get that and make sure that it's that it works all correctly. But hopefully there'll be a new thing coming through, so a new set of videos and documentation coming through soon. Then after that, we'll move over to the AI. I'm also looking at potentially not doing the EBS integration for this video. I'm actually probably going to build my own little construction system, which will essentially be, it's a prefood. You go into like this ruined town, and you go up to the different objects, and as long as you've got the resources, you can go through the prompts and actually build that object, and then that will allow you to spawn the creatures and stuff like that. I think I'm going to take that approach. It'll just be a lot quicker and a lot easier than having to try and actually bring in that whole third-party system and tie it in. I will do that eventually, but I think the EBS guy is actually going to make a legitimate integration through an indigenous one, which will be a lot better than what I'll be able to put together. But also, when that does come out, I will be looking at expanding on that and adding in some of the colony management features that I wanted to have in my new add-on. But for this project, I'm just going to keep it small and do it more RTS focus. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll be back on tomorrow to get started on the next chapter. Thank you.